Hello, everybody. So I wanted to say good afternoon, but I just realized it's not good afternoon for everybody. I'm very delighted to be here today. Of course, I would have loved to meet you all in Munich, but I'm sure this will happen some other time. My name is Tigda Wilkening, and I want to talk to you about circularity in fashion today. I'm a founder, activist, and author myself. I founded my first company, Kleiderei, back in 2012 when I was 25 years old. And this year I wrote my first book, The Biopizza Dilemma, which is basically an invitation for people to rethink their daily lives concerning sustainability, being it more than just consuming bio or organic products, because I'm very much convinced that it takes more for a real shift. Um, my daily business is to work with fashion companies on their strategies towards more sustainability and circularity. And that's why we're right in the topic. Okay, like this. Yes, perfect. So circularity, the chance of balancing economical and environmental barriers with fashion, fun, and sexiness. What's the problem? The problem is that globally, 63 million tons of fibers are used for clothing, generating 10% of the greenhouse gas emissions and responsible for 20% of water waste and large amounts of textile waste. In Europe, we have 180,000 tons of textile waste generated each year, and only 15 to 20% are collected for recycling, and only 1% is recycled into new clothing. So let's repeat this. Basically, only 1% of 180 billion textiles produced every year is made from recycled materials. That's basically nothing, right? And still, we always hear this buzzword, circularity in fashion, circularity in fashion. But what does this actually mean? Greenpeace just published their 10 years report to the Defects campaign, which they started in 2011. And it was quite funny because it was basically parallel to when we founded our Kleiderei business. And we all tried to disrupt the fashion industry. And up to then, nobody had ever really talked about this business being a dirty business. And then in 2013, I think we all remember the factory Rana Plaza burned and broke down. The building collapsed and it killed over 1,000 people. And so we actually all know what's going on. And I think many of you are here. That's why many of you are here today. But let's take a look at what has really changed, actually. Because according to this Greenpeace report, not enough. The results are very interesting, but they are really not inspiring or impressive. Greenpeace comes to the conclusion that the textile industry must decelerate its business and not only close the material cycle, but decelerate the flow of goods by reducing both production and consumption. We need less but better production, and we need less but better consumption. So let's take a big little lap back, because this is why we actually founded Kleiderei in 2012. Me and my co-founder, Paula Fender, which you can also see on the picture, we were both tired of owning fashion, even if we knew we only wanted to wear it once. And in Germany, we have the famous party top, which we say is like worn in average 1.7 times. So we wanted to find a solution for this, because we were educated a little bit about sustainability, but we didn't want to give up on fashion. We wanted to have fun. We didn't want it to be so responsible and so conscious and always think about everything for a long time. So we thought, how cool would it be if we could just rent stuff? And we couldn't. There was no offer in Germany, so we founded the company ourselves. And we offered a monthly subscription model for pieces of daily fashion each month. First in a store in Hamburg, and then via crowdfunding, we also went online. And there were basically one big barrier, and that was that people were too used to cheap clothing. So we did have an immense demand. We had like over 2,000 people on our waiting list in the end when we closed down the business in 2018, the online shop. But it was just not possible to find a price system that was balancing the interest of the people and the intent to rent, but on the other hand, that they were used that like for basically the same amount which we had for a monthly subscription, which was like 40, 50, 60 euros. We tried everything, but it was always too expensive because they could just buy 4 new pieces at every fast fashion retailer in the city. And so it was always hard to explain why renting was like more expensive than buying fast fashion. And so we shut down the business. We took a little time. It's 3 years ago now, but we still have 2 stores in Cologne and Freiburg, like brick and mortar stores where you can rent fashion. And our colleague Ina Schröder is the chef. And I am thinking about the topic since then, basically, because how can we find a way that business models go more to service and less to producing and selling and trashing clothing? So I do really believe that the big shift is a system change, and it's the only answer that we have. It requires fashion companies to shift from manufacture and sale to service like repair, reuse, sharing, lending, renting, and the resale of second-hand clothing, which is basically what we see happening at the moment at the most. So what do we have to do? Basically, it starts with the design process. We have to start to design for longevity, for repair, and for cyclability. We also need to have a production that works in slower cycles, produces higher quality, and focuses on service instead of sales. In the use part, it is important for us to be educated to upcycling, secondhand, and repair. And in the end, we have to have the possibility to give the textiles back to the manufacturer, who then, at the end of life cycle, first life cycle or second life cycle, depends if it was rented or resold already, has a possibility to biodegradable, to repair or reuse the product. This is really, I really believe in this, and this is where we have to go. So, and the last part would be to really recycle the textile fibers more than just 1%. So how do we see the business models? We have the first part, which is circular material. Then we have the second part, which is circular design. And with the third part, which is circular services. Circular material is basically a really fun one because actually we are saving resources. I mean, everybody's talking about planetary boundaries and us not having enough resources. And this is where we could really, really start. I mean, 40% of the production cost of from a product are material, and it would be even an economical win to keep the material in the loop. And besides, it would make us a little more independent from cotton traders and problems of transport and logistics. Become getting new material every collection. It would be so much smarter to recycle your own materials. Obviously, we know the barriers. It's material blends. It's about keeping the knowledge in the textile, because if people cut out the little label in their shirts, then who knows what's in the textile. But this is something that is already where startups are working on. We have markers, we have blockchain, we have young startups like WeTrade to make it possible to scan a textile and see where it comes from and if it's organic cotton or not, or if it's your fiber. And we should really start working on the shift and declare which fibers are in the textile. We need a global report of textile blends in use so that we know, and the EU also, any governance together can invest in scaling up recycling technologies with an impact. I mean, we need to know, is it the most important thing to recycle denim, like with elastane anteils or cotton and synthetics, or is it more important to recycle just polyester or polyacryl for knitwear? I mean, this is something we should really, really work on together to find out. And one of the best practice examples already, in my opinion, is the cradle to cradle concept, because it plans products right from the beginning for a circular future. And we have brands like Wolfart and User already achieving a great amount of products based on the system. The second pillar is circular design. Also, a number which we always forget is that 80% of the environmental impact of a product is basically manifested in the design process. And we all know design tells a story. So how smart would it be to say that these products are designed for circularity? They are really designed for a sustainable future, selling products to young people, saying this product is designed for your future. But there's still not really an awareness for processes like this. New collections have to be produced in so short time. I mean, we all know the numbers, like maximum 52 new collections each year. So it's having new clothes coming every week. So we really need to change this to have more time to make better design decisions. We need more knowledge. And of course, also a big buzzword, change management, but still not implemented in the amount that we would need. Oh, this turned out really tiny, sorry, but I will anyway tell it to you. So we need to implement design structures, we need slower design, we need less collections, and we can perhaps go more into a basic elastic system and implement things that repeat and structures that repeat for jerseys or for denim. And of course, educate students at the beginning of their career in design studies and tell them about sustainability and circularity. There's great projects going on, but it needs to be the common ground for every student designing. And then change management. I mean, we need a change of mindset. We need to go into cooperation because no company, even with the best practice I show you today, no company will do this on their own. We all have to work together. We need an open source exchange of best practice scenarios. It's not necessary that every company makes the same mistakes. We can learn from each other and we can move this together. Two best practice examples for me are Angel with their Circularity, which is a t-shirt which is made from post-consumer use waste, which they collect. So the consumers send them back and it's getting mechanically recycled into a new t-shirt with, I think there's 10-ton length to it. And then Levi's also recollecting their former textiles and upcycling them to very, very cool new pieces, which then are not sold but rented out. Yeah, and which leads us renting out to the third pillar, which is circular services. So just imagine for a second how cool it would be if we could rent out high quality products for the price that we pay for cheap fast fashion at the moment, and have much higher quality, have so much more fun with our wardrobe, and only buy it if we want to keep it. And the products could be taken back, they could be resold, they could be repaired, reused, because they're worth it. Because fast fashion is really not really worth the effort. I understand this, we should do it anyways, but it feels like it's not worth it. But if we increase the quality of products and share them, then it would be definitely worth to invest all this energy. So we are back to the sentence from textile dealer to service provider, the shift that we need. But what are the barriers? We already talked about this earlier when I talked about Circularity. The big barrier is obviously the cheap production and quick sales all the out of school, and business schools, CEOs, and all the institutions teach us to do economics that way. And also the government supports systems like this with the taxes, which make it cheaper to dispose textiles that are not sold than to donate them, to reuse them, or implement change. And so the solutions will basically be education. We need a mindset, and we need to teach it from the beginning. And we need tax systems that make it that incentivize longevity. And products that haven't been sold need to be donated and reused, and not only donated for common goods, which is awesome and so necessary, but we also need it perhaps to be donated to design schools or fashion designers to show how upcycling can be scaled up with textiles that were not sold, for example. Good examples are Saudi with their repair service, with rental services, with an own index of saying how repairable a product is, and challenging themselves all the time. Patagonia also Runway being a major player in renting globally, and of course our own business idea, Circularity. So what I always really want to manifest that this is not only a technical problem, because actually all the solutions are there. There's amazing products, recycling fibers, And we all know it. There's books about it, there's papers, so the knowledge will be there. But it's basically also a problem of behavioral economics because we love to do what we're used to be doing. We have basically three main problems that keep us from changing. Us, I mean you as a company, you as a seller, you as a supplier, you as a consumer, as a journalist, as a fashion blogger, as a moderator, all of us. We are all suffering from three different biases, and that is our status quo bias. We strongly believe that everything is right the way it is because it has always been like this. We really think that changing and moving is a little weird, and most of us want people to stay, things to stay the way they are. This is also a problem when it comes to self-control because we mostly hang in the moment. Like some people do have a lot of self-control, they're really good in planning their future and working towards it and working like internalizing and own change management. But very many people really think of the moment, they want to have fun, and they say, yeah, it would be really amazing to lean towards a sustainable lifestyle, but then you see a new shirt and it's really cute and it's really chic and you buy it. So we need to work on our self-control, all of us. And the third thing is confirmation bias. People really stay with their opinions, and what is the good, like status quo bias, can always be confirmed by whatever we tell them. And we really, really, really need to relearn. We need to break up this mindset that selling cheap stuff is a super idea. It's not. But it's something we have to really change in our minds. Okay, so this is the graphic we had right from the beginning with the little changes in what can we do. So I'm down here, I'm a user of textiles. So I have to relearn, I have to ditch my old habits, I have to create communities and start using textiles different. You, being perhaps a producer, being a supplier, you should start sharing your information, implement new technologies, and produce in slower cycles, produce higher quality, and learn to do service instead of sales. And work together with the seller. Sellers should take back the clothing, biodegrade it, repair it, reuse it. We had it in the beginning, but it is also so important to collaborate with the producers and the suppliers to support them and to build this shift together. And the last part, what we also obviously need is political powers. We have political powers implemented already. We have the EU strategy for sustainable textiles or the supply chain law, which we have in Germany, but also on EU level. And what we really need for this is that we need to make materials public. We need to make annual reports of the materials that are used and also in which blends they are used in textiles. I mean, 180 billion textiles. We need to know what's in it and what's going on. We need to get an overview that is transparent because otherwise we cannot really implement systems, right? And then take back. Sellers should be responsible for taking back the systems of their textiles and cooperate with common good collectors. And really, take back doesn't mean trash them. It means really take them back and make something sensible with them. That's why I believe we should have trash tags. Sellers should pay for textiles that are not biodegradable to a fund that outcycles recycling. Because what's the problem in the end? We have amazing startups that they have to try to fund and get the money. But where should the money come from? The money should come from the companies that make the trash, right? And please start analyzing the lifespan. And this has to be mandatory. And this could also be a great incentive for taxes. If we produce textiles that have a long life, they are not wasted and they are not going to trash. So this could be incentivized in the tax system. And anyways, it should really be our goal. Okay. So, this really went long, so we're missing the text. Always that with the techniques. Okay, but basically it says that really the main sentence we learned today is we need to shift from selling cheap stuff to understanding that clothing is life, clothing is fun, clothing is sexy, and that we should consume it as a service in a high quality to be good to the environment, to be good in an economical way, because we all know it's important, and to be good to society, and that's it. Thank you very much for listening. If you want to hear or read more, I'd be very happy if you buy my book and read it. And I'm very excited for your questions now.
Tekla, the single most important question from Charles, is the book available in English?
Not yet. No.
We need to build up the demand. But Tekla, I thoroughly enjoyed that because you're talking about a subject which is very close to my heart. And you have some new lines of thought on it, which are very interesting. There are a couple of questions which have been sent in, but I'm going to do presenter's privilege and ask you questions myself as well. I was fascinated what you were saying about behavioral economics. I'm a big fan of Gladwell. So everything he's written on the tipping point and blink and how much we put into our self-appearance. And you started to talk about textiles is also fun. And that's an element that we should never forget. And I'm really proud that you've said that, because most of the sports industry forget the enjoyable side, the interaction that we have within textiles. But the question I want to ask you is about extended producer responsibility, EPR. Yeah. We know the legislation is incoming. How close, in your opinion, is the legislation? So how soon will we see certain guidelines? I mean, they're going to start to give us hints. Well, the hints are already here. They're going to start to make parameters that we must conform. Is there any insight that you can give us of either German EPR, because the Germans are certainly more ahead than the British, or European EPR, which will follow a couple of years afterwards? What can you say on extended producer responsibility, please? Yeah,
great. Thank you very much for your kind words, and happy to be on a common ground. Yeah, I actually think it will come over the European law, because in Germany we haven't talked about it yet. We do have our supply chain law, but it doesn't include it only goes in the production part of the textile or the supply chain. I think it's a European thing, and I think it's basically something that we also as citizens should really demand for, to make it really happen. Because obviously it's something that companies who are having a status quo bias don't want, and it is something where we should really work for. I mean, there is the law for repair, which is implemented already, that products have to be repairable, and this is basically something that Citizens Power also brought in, and that we wanted this, and we should also do the same thing for making companies responsible for the products after selling them. Yeah, and so I think it's time to start a revolution.
I think you make a very good point that we can either wait for the legislation to come in and be part of the mass that nobody knows, or you can make the first step. And you quoted several brands, of which Valde is one that I had the honour of sitting alongside Sandra on the performance days jury from Valde. And the lines of thought down in that Schwabian company are just way above what I'm used to seeing. But yes, they've taken the option to do it first, and they are becoming known for their innovation of process, their whole approach to it. But I'm not here to fill you full of my comments. I have 3 questions which have come in so far. Remember, you can still send in questions. There is a Slido bar either to the right hand side of our pictures, or underneath, if you do the view more hyperlink tag immediately underneath our pictures, or you can get there through the navigation bar on the left. But I'm going to give you all 3 questions, and then you can choose to answer which ones you want. Gemma has said, what do you recommend if the fabric cannot be recycled due to double composition? Gemma, I'm also going to come in on that one, but yeah. So that's the first question. Then we have an anonymous one. What about coated or laminated fabrics? How can these fabrics and hence their functions be circular? So the third question is, hi, hard to imagine a world where all people can afford to buy products at a high price point. Can we sell at a lower price but still include circularity? And there was a fourth question. So you've got all of these things to juggle. How far is circularity on dyed nylon polyester, on dyed polyester fabrics? Are there concepts already where used coloured PES garments come back in the shape of new pieces? So if I read those four questions again, what do you recommend doing if the fabric cannot be recycled due to double composition? What about coated or laminated fabrics? Can they become circular? It is hard to imagine a world where all people can afford to buy products at a high price. Can we introduce circularity at a lower price point? And the last question, how far is circularity on dyed polyester fabrics? Are there already examples of it where coloured polyester fabrics come back in the shape of new pieces? So which of those questions do you want to address?
I think we can, obviously along the way, all of them, but I think we can also combine the questions, because what I really hear out is that it is a very precise material question. And to be honest, I would say no, no, and no, because the problem or the chance of circularity is that you really have to start from the design process, and if we have a coated material, me myself wearing one today, or bicarbonate material or a dyed material, it is important to know what is in the material, what are the chemistries, what is the physical process, and just from the feeling, probably all of those three materials lack really detailed information. And this is what is, on the other hand, the chance, also going to question number 4 about the pricing. I think at the moment from where we work right now, no, just like with the recycling, but if we start thinking right from the beginning, then it will be possible. It will be possible because other textiles will be more expensive, because we need to say that production cannot be this cheap. And then we have to all scale up different processes, like having nylons, dyed materials, polyesters, coated materials, being declared what we have, and implementing recycling and reusage technologies that are, like I said, paid by companies because they are more responsible for the products than trashing them. But this is really a shift. We cannot say we take what we have today and just turn it into sustainable. And I think this is what everybody wishes for. And this is basically also the lie that we tell each other. And then we're like, oh, well, if we think about it for longer, then it doesn't work out. Oh, so let's not do it. It really starts one step before. So all of you, and I guess all of you who ask the questions with the materials, are probably designers interested in it. So just take one step back and think about it. Like, where can I find this material where perhaps somebody thought about it? What could happen later with it? Or if you don't find this material, then find someone who will think about it with you, because it really starts a step earlier than buying material at the moment.
Or potentially they should ask their supplier, why can't it be a more circular fabric? So they can apply the pressure going up the chain. But I think the audience at the moment, we do have designers, we also have fabric developers, but this is a very specialized part. This is the performance sports part, and they're really good on detail. Sometimes I get lost within the detail. And what I really appreciated is that you brought in an outsider's point of view. You represent the majority of the fashion market, which is much bigger than us. And it's those simple questions that we need to ask, and we need to apply pressure going up the chain. Because as you say, when we understand it, we can then push it down the chain through our designs, through our retailers to our users. So I'm really impressed on that. But I want to come back to Gemma. Gemma, there's a project now in England called Worn Again. And it's where polycotton goes to die. as we know, as a mixed fiber, we can't do anything with it. And polycotton is the two cheap fibers combined together, and we get the benefits of both. Cindy is now building a full-scale plant, so polycotton goes into the process, and we get recycled polyester out, and we also get cellulose. Now, the cellulose we can put in a treatment, and we could create a lyocell or use it for agriculture. But if you Google Worn Again, have a look at what they're doing. So yes, there are some mixed fibers. We're now starting to address that problem, but it's a higher level of science and chemistry, and those people are coming on board. The other point
I also have one example. It's Woolworth with the cradle-to-cradle nylons. They have kites which are also certified. So this is also, I think, a good clue, because it's a blend too.
I also want to add something from the Fabric Forum, and if I'm really lucky, I'm going to be able to find the fabric, but I can't see it right now. I think Ponte Torto in Italy took coloured polyester bottle tops and actually separated them. So all the red went in one direction, all the green went in another direction, and all the black. And they have actually produced the polyester using those colours that went in. And they've created a real mismatched fabric that I adore. But I remember it was submitted to us as on the judging panel, and it just blew my mind. But they used automatic processing system that could colour sort, because as we know, the majority of the PET bottle is clear plastic, but this was using the coloured plastic, and rather than approaching it, we need to decolorize it and then recolorize it, they actually just processed it within those colours. So people are iterating, and Ponte Torto are so well known for being at the leading edge. Not everything comes off, but if we don't experiment, if we don't try and upset what the norm is, we will never progress. But Thekla, back to you. It's your presentation, and I'm hogging bits.
No, it's perfect. It's so nice. It's so interesting to hear your what you know, and it's like it's the last part I had in the presentation. You know, nobody will ever know everything, and we always have to talk about it together and get the information together.
Well, the theme of collaboration has come up several times already today. So I think to all those brands who think they're going to make themselves the champion of it, the industry can champion it. And the more that we work with our technical rivals, the more it's going to be better, not only from the environmental impact that you've been describing, but I think the health and the reputation of the industry, because at the moment, apparel is seen as a real polluting industry. And if we can challenge that and show how we are progressed in our thinking and our cooperation, I think it's going to be good for everybody. But Thekla, can I come back on a question which your point raised earlier? What are your views about fast fashion? You know, when we get to the age of 12 or 13, and for the next decade, when we don't have much of a budget, because we start off with pocket money, we end up, we've got Saturday jobs, so we can't afford the best stuff. Do you think we will ever cure fast fashion? Or should the question be, should we try and cure fast fashion, or should we just accept it's always going to exist and perhaps use better materials? What are your views on fast fashion?
Yeah, totally. Super interesting question. Yes, I think one thing in circularity would be that if you have fast fashion, it has to be biodegradable materials, for example, and faster. And I am also a big fan. I know you're not really, you're in the outer and sports, so you know that synthetics are not as bad as often communicated. So we could also find polyester to be in the circle, in the loop all the time, which is a very, very cheap material, and would be even cheaper if we recycled it on scale, obviously. So yes, I think it would be possible, and it could also be fun, because what we always think in circularity is that it has to be circling forever, but it could also be breaking down like the bottles, basically we use bottles once. Bottles is like a super nice example how I imagine this. I imagine this as a part of rental, but owning it. So like I buy a water bottle with a PET bottle that is going to recycle after I use it, because I never want to own this bottle. I just give it back. So I just wear fashion, and it might be polyester, like the bottle is also a synthetic material. And then the manufacturer takes it back and makes new materials out of it for even, for the younger kids, for my younger siblings, for my friends. And it just turns around that way. And I think this is something we can think about, which is super interesting. Because I just want to have style when I'm 12, when I'm 13. I don't want to have fashion investments that I can sell. I just want to look cool. That's all I want. So why do I buy clothing? Why don't I just wear it and give it back and it's being turned over? This is one thing I can really imagine. Then obviously having the charms of secondhand coming in, it's cheaper, it's fun, it's individual. So we could have a mix and match of fast fashion that can be recycled quickly, and secondhand, and perhaps even digital fashion. I mean, why not? Imagine this wasn't really my outfit right now, and I was actually naked underneath.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and I think you're also now pulling in traits from Gen Z and also Gen Alpha, who are actually not so precious about what they own. And there's an expression that's been referred to the Instagram generation, which is after you've been pictured wearing a certain top, you don't want to be pictured in it again. So they'll lend it to their friends. So they're actually quite happy with this almost gig feeling of lending stuff out, using borrowed clothing. And it's just, where is the money line within it? But that's a question that I don't think suitable for your presentation, which has become so interesting. What I do want to say, I want to go back to what has been zapped into us. Anne-Marie, fantastic. She's now providing the evidence about Worn Again. So thank you for doing my work and looking up the website. But Frank has asked the question, is the dye stuff in PET bottles and or polyester fabrics challenging the recycling process? So in general, to run smoothly, or is it just impacting the color outcome? And from my point of view, it's taking, if you don't have to address the color question, it's a process that you don't have to apply. If you're not applying processes, it makes it cheaper and it makes it flow more easily. But I am not a recycled polyester engineer. I see the process going on. Can I make an appeal? If there are any specialists in this area, can you zap us on the question line for Frank? How much extra hassle is it to take out the colour from a recycled feedstock? Or is it just a case of a relatively simple process? But to me, when I saw the Ponte Torto fabric, what appealed to me was the story that it embedded. It carried, you thought, what are these colours? And it immediately started a conversation. And to me, that is the growing of the emotional bond. So it's the emotional durability of the product, which is more important than the physical durability. If we love our clothing more, if we give our clothing reasons to be loved, people will hold on to it, which is the ultimate solution. But Thekla, no more questions. Can I ask you to just say some closing words, 30 seconds worth? We feel very privileged to hear your point of view. What message do you want us to leave with?
Yeah, I want to leave us with a message that fashion should be fun, and I would love that we find solutions that take fashion away from trash. And I think we have two main goals, and it is to relearn our consumption habits and to relearn the way we consume at the moment. And from the production side, really to think about if there can be a mix and match model of supplying, of selling, and of being a service, like offering repairs, rentals, reuse offers directly from the manufacturer to also, to learn about the products and improve the system.
Thekla, thank you ever so much. If people have got further questions, do you mind if they email you direct via the details you've given or the
please,
Performance
yes.
Days website? Thank you very
I'd
much.
love to. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.